Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our let me pause my Spotify. Our last session, believe it or not, of stepping out of burnout, breaking the stress cycle. Thank you all so much for being here on a crazy week where everybody's talking about the submarine, right? No better way to stress yourself out during the week than thinking about a bunch of billionaires stuck at the bottom of the ocean. I really do hope for the best. I haven't watched the news yet today, so y'all can fill me in if there was something big that happened with it. But I figured we'd start off with a little, I don't know that I would call it fun, but an interesting question, which is your TikTok FYP. If you could change the algorithm to your TikTok FYP, what type of content would you no longer want to see besides submarines? I'll go first. The Schumann residence, I don't even know what it's all about, but everybody's talking about the Schumann residence on TikTokies today and how apparently, who knows, maybe we're moving into the 5D. I don't even know anymore, but it is consuming that, and the submarine and aliens are consuming my FYP. Yes, Meredith. Anybody else have anything interesting that keeps showing up on your FYP? Or is it just me? All right. Well, while y'all are thinking about that and putting your responses in the chat, just a little bit of a quick review on things before we jump into our last session, Andrea, the alien stuff too. What does that mean about us? Just that we're millennials and that we're definitely the first generation ready to pay tribute and go with the aliens to a new planet. That's all. That's all. Flat Earthers, Jessica. Ooh, that's a good one. I haven't seen that one shown up in a while, but I'm sure that it will resurface any day now, especially now that I'm talking about it. I'm sure my phone is listening to me. Anyways, before we dive into the fun stuff today, just kind of a quick review for y'all of where we've come from. We've come so far. So far, we've talked about how to change the feedback loop, right? By hacking your hormones, reversing that fight or flight mode. And last week, we also learned how impactful and powerful our subconscious mind is and our beliefs when it comes to our perceptions of reality and really understanding that root mindset and how it has an effect on our stress levels. This evening, we're going to dive into part 4, moving from reacting to creating, and giving you some really concrete strategies to work with, some of which we're even going to try out here this evening. But here's the thing, y'all, before we dive into the strategies, the harsh truth of it all, I hate to break it to you, is that your subconscious can't just be magically changed overnight, right? Remember that filter system that we talked about in the RAS and the programs that are always running in our minds. And the unconscious mind doesn't work on the current set of directions. You can give it a current set of directions, but it really only understands what you focused on up until now. So the only way to change your mind processes, how your mind processes input, is to change how your brain is wired. And the only way for us to change how our brain is wired, long term at least, is through the power of your conscious thought. So it kind of goes both ways, right? We talked last week about this whole mind-blowing fact that about 90% of what happens to us and how we perceive our reality is based on our subconscious. And the other 10% is based on our current conscious thinking and what we're, currently aware of. But here's the thing, y'all, is that we are grossly underestimating the power of that 10% that our conscious mind is able to influence on our unconscious mind and create a change in that programming to go from the reacting mode, where our subconscious is the one that's running the show based on our past beliefs and patterns, to then moving into creation mode, where our thoughts are driven by intention. And those thoughts then create positive emotions, and those emotions create positive hormones, which have a physiological impact on our body in that feedback cycle loop that's going on and on and on, right? So on a millisecond basis, your brain is taking in all that stimulus from all of your senses, what you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and then all of that stimulus is filtered through from your unconscious to your conscious, and eventually presented up here for your conscious brain to finally make meaning from. But again, we talked last week that, we're not actually perceiving our actual reality. We're just perceiving a highly filtered version of reality based on whatever bits of information are allowed in, based on our past beliefs, our past experiences. And here's the thing, especially for us millennials, we've gone through enough unprecedented historical events. We've gone through enough recessions that when we're going about our daily lives, there is this shit ton of information and stimulus overload coming at us from every single angle. And to be honest, a lot of that stimulus is negative. Case in point, the news today, the news the last several days, where all we've been talking about is aliens and people that are dying at the bottom of the ocean and people that are dying trying to immigrate here to flee their country. The list goes on. We'll take a deep breath together. So it becomes really easy, unless we're on vacation and unless we're in a really positive environment where our mind is allowed to be ruled by those negative stimulus. So in order to really be able to foster a positive train of thoughts, in order to really be able to shift that cycle, it's going to require us to focus more internally than externally. And there's this concept in psychology that I just want to introduce y'all to before we start diving into some of these strategies. And it's this whole idea of bottom-up versus top-down attention. And so with bottom-up attention, this is the mode that most of us are living in on a daily basis for most of our lives, where we are simply reacting to all of these stimulus that are coming at us and reacting emotionally based on our past patterns, right? And again, this gets into this whole idea where most of the time, the way that we operate, our habits, our behaviors are highly, highly influenced by the subconscious, by our past patterns. Now, top-down attention, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. This is where we get into the idea of intention. And what we're really going for here is to promote the thoughts that create the desired emotions and those associated hormonal releases. This is where mindset change happens, my friends, is that when we stop reacting to everything out here and when we start creating from the top down, in other words, using the power of that 10% of our conscious mind in order to make changes over time to that 90% of the subconscious. Because a lot of people will say, well, I'm just going to think positive thoughts. And I'm like, that is great. But your conscious mind only makes up 10% of your reality. And it's going to take a lot of energy for you to consistently be thinking positive thoughts all the time. And so instead, why don't we focus on programming the subconscious, which is the thing that's really running the show for you? So that's what we're going to talk about here. The conscious mind is the goal setter, and the unconscious mind is the goal getter. If we give the right set of directions from our conscious to our unconscious will do most of the work for us. Why? Because it does the work by filtering in the information that fits with our intentions. The problem is that we've gotten so far away from being able to live our lives with intention as opposed to no fault of our own, because there's so much information load and so much stimulus overload going on that we live our lives in that place of reaction. Control in our lives comes from the conscious. The 90% gets influenced by the 10%, as opposed to the 10% getting influenced by that 90%. So we talked about this last week. I'm not going to go into this too much in depth. I'm sure y'all still love my little analogy, or my, what do you call this when the letters stand for something? The core principles of mindset change. I'm going to come up with something better eventually, but for right now, we're going to use the acronym SPIRM, and it stands for specific, positive, imagination versus reality, and being able to match and mirror. So we're going to kind of review these really quickly, and then we're going to dive into the strategies. First one, specific, the S. In order for our unconscious mind to be able to filter in the right set of data, we need to give it specific directions. I could say I want to make more money, and then my unconscious mind filters in information for me and allows me to focus on more money. And that could just mean a penny on the ground, though, right? Instead of what I really want is I want to be able to surpass my previous year's annual income, perhaps, right? So get really specific is the first thing here, because if your unconscious mind doesn't have the specific directions to work from, then remember, your unconscious mind is the goal getter. Well, it's going to be going to get a goal that you don't actually want, or that is not specific to what you want. Next one is the positive, framing it in the affirmative. The subconscious, remember, operates on images, metaphors. It doesn't operate on language like we do in our conscious minds. So it's really important that we don't frame what we want in terms of the negative. If I say, I don't want this job anymore, I don't want to be in debt anymore, all my unconscious is able to process from that is the symbol, is the image, the generalized concept, right? So always making sure that we're not just specific, but we're also framing it in the positive. Imagination versus reality. We talked about this last week, and we're going to dive into this more with the strategies, but basically same exact regions light up in our brain, whether or not we're imagining something versus we're experiencing it in our outside world. And then the outcome must match the state. This is the whole idea of matching and mirroring, right? You cannot experience a version of your outer world that doesn't match your inner world. Another way to say that is like your brain is only capable of creating an internal representation from the information that your brain knows how to comprehend. So if you're telling yourself that you want more freedom and abundance, but your brain doesn't actually know what that means, you first need to give yourself the experiences that foster freedom and abundance in other ways. If I say I want more money or I want more joy in my life, okay, great. Maybe more money might bring you that joy, but what are some other things that you can do to foster that joy in the meantime? Because the inner state needs to match the outer outcome for things to be able to, quote unquote, manifest for us. So here we go, y'all. You ready for some specific in-depth mindset strategies? The first one that we're going to talk about today is this whole idea of what's called anchoring. This is a neurolinguistic programming mindset strategy. And the whole idea behind anchoring is that by recalling past memories, experiences, internal representations, whatever you want to call them, that are associated with your desired emotion, this is when you begin to be able to kind of hack your mindset, where by practicing this anchoring strategy, you align your inner state to your goals. And again, remember the concepts here of what we just talked about, imagination versus reality. You can imagine a past event in your life and foster those same emotions all over again because your brain doesn't know the difference between you imagining that event again versus you experiencing it in real life. So let's break this down in terms of the steps for anchoring. I'm going to walk you through this. And then at the end of our session today, I'm going to have a special little treat for all of you. We're actually going to do a guided visualization of one of these habits all together. So the first step here for creating your desired present inner state is to simply ask yourself, how do you want to feel? We so oftentimes, again, focus on the negative of I'm so tired of feeling stress and I don't want to feel, all this anxiety all the time, but we don't necessarily set those intentions to say, well, how is it that you want to feel instead? So ask yourself that right now, whether you are stressed out, whether you're feeling burnt out, how is it that you want to feel? Go ahead and blow up the chat, put it in the chat. How do you want to feel? And if you're not sure, if you're like, gosh, I don't even know how I want to feel anymore, Peter, well, how would you need to feel to have the thing that you want? If you want more abundance in your life, if you want more happiness and peace in your life, how would you need to feel to have that thing that you want? Love these responses coming in already. At peace, happy and full of hope. Want to feel relaxed, empowered, calm, energized. Purposeful. I like that one, Angie. Want to feel peace, free, excited. Awesome. So a lot of these have some commonalities. So we'll be sure to use some of these examples as we're going through this. So you've already done the first step. You've already given now your unconscious brain the directions to say, this is how I want to feel. The external outcome must match the internal state. If you're not in alignment, you can get into alignment by using this strategy of anchoring. So the second step here is then to be able to recall a past memory of a time that you felt that way. And I'm going to use the example for today of motivation. So if you are wanting to feel more motivation, or a lot of you said like calm and peace in your life, think about when was a time for you that you felt that emotion really strongly. If it was calm and peace, for example, maybe it was when you took like an extended vacation. So take a moment, think about that, and recall the past memory of the time that you felt motivated. Okay. Now, as you're doing this and as you are recalling that past event, I want you to make sure that you're doing it by involving as many senses as possible. Because your brain, when it recreates a memory, all it's doing is it's pulling out all of those past connections based on how that information was stored from our visual cortex, from our auditory cortex that processes what we hear, from the kinesthetic components of the brain that process the touch and the feel and even the emotions. So as you are recalling that past memory, you're going to think about, what was it that you saw? What was all the things that you saw around you? What were all the things that you heard around you? What were even all of the things that you smelled around you? One of the fascinating things about your sense of smell actually is that your sense of smell is one of the most quickly processed senses in your brain. It passes by even the amygdala and things like that. And so if you can remember the scent of something, a good example like this for me is like anytime that I want to feel like calm and peaceful, I imagine the smell of my grandma's kitchen, because that for me always brings me peace, like the smell of fresh bread, the smell of fresh cookies baking. So involve as many senses as possible. There's some questions in the chat here. Let's go ahead and address those now. So Jade, what if you're not sure if there's been a past memory? So here's the cool thing, right? Is that again, your brain can't tell the difference between an imagined event versus reality. So if you're like, shit, I don't even know if I have a past memory of feeling motivated. Well, guess what? You can imagine that memory in your mind, or even a memory that is somewhat, when you felt somewhat motivated, right? And you can amplify that in your mind by enhancing the visual memory using your imagination. So don't worry so much if you're not able to like remember the exact event. You can always fill in details yourself using your imagination because your brain doesn't know any different. And Sierra, that kind of goes to that question as well. It's been so long I can't even recall. So again, feel free to recall the details that you can recall. And then, hey, if you can't recall what the smell was like, then imagine for yourself, what do you think the smell would have been like? If you were to be able to remember, what would the smell be like? What would the taste be like? What would you be sensing with your sense of touch? Those sorts of things. Cool? All right. So then the next step after you have asked yourself, how do I want to feel? You pulled up that memory of the past. The next step is then to simply magnify the heck out of those experiences and emotions. In my online course that I'll talk to you guys here about at the end, I have guided visualizations for this, which will walk you through with audio, guided visualizations with the audio that is designed to be able to impact and influence certain emotions. So for example, there's one in there for motivation. But the idea here is that not only are you magnifying the actual sensory details and pulling those up, but you're also magnifying the feeling. Like we don't, when we think about like past good experiences, remember what we talked about even 2 weeks ago, our brains are like oil for the good and glue for the bad. And because of our built-in negativity bias, as human beings, we have a really hard time staying with the good, staying in the moment with that good. And so giving yourself that opportunity as part of this anchoring strategy to sit with those positive emotions, really amplify the fuck out of those emotions like motivation, peace, and calm, and so on and so forth. And Jade says some good things are also tied to bad things, so it can be hard to pull distinction between the two. So when thinking of what I want the sensory can bring and what I don't want, the negatively sinks in. So yeah, this again goes back to that negativity bias, right? And especially for a lot of us that are in that constant state of stress, is that oftentimes this happens in meditation too. Anytime that you sit down and meditate and you're like, okay, I'm going to think calm thoughts. And then before you know it, all of your past trauma kind of resurfaces. So it's really helpful to just think about the directions for now. And then later, maybe tonight, as you're feeling really calm, right? When you're in that space, when you can allow your brain to be able to think about the good things and give your brain a break from its default pattern of always thinking about the bad things. It's a natural human thing that we do. It's just about being able to find those times where you can relax enough so that that amygdala calms down enough so that you can really focus and soak in the good. Okay. So magnify the experiences, replay that memory over and over again, really magnifying it. And Andrea, yeah, that's why it's important to relax enough from the fight or flight to do this kind of stuff. Exactly. So that's what we talked about in week 2, is that we're talking in these last 2 weeks all about the reprogram stuff. But if you're having a hard time with this, don't beat yourself up, because what that could mean for you is that it just means that maybe your nervous system is still dysregulated and you're still in that chronic fight or flight response, right? And so give yourself that time to really relax, do the habits and the strategies to regulate your nervous system, and don't feel like you have to do this work right now today. Cool? Good points. All right. And then here's the really cool thing with anchoring. That's really fascinating. When I first learned about this, I was like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? So any moment that we're in reaction mode, where our subconscious is the thing that is creating our sense of reality, our subconscious is simply reacting to our outside stimulus. And so, for example, if we're really, really stressed out and somebody just simply comes along and simply, touches your arm in the slightest little way, you might like jerk back, because your default reaction is going to be based on your internal representation of reality right now, which is, high stress and anxiety. So your subconscious is always reacting to these outside stimulus. One of the easiest ways, though, to activate your emotions from the past, from those past experiences, is through touch. Because you can do this at any point in time, right? Instead of, you might not always have access to like the image in your mind or a photo or a video that reminds you of that experience, but you can remind yourself of the sensor, or you can remind your brain of that experience through sense much, much easier. So the idea is that as you are replaying that mental movie in your mind of the time that you really felt motivated, or the time that you felt really calm and peaceful, you're going to then, at the height of the emotion, touch one part of your body. And I suggest touching a knuckle, because the thing is that if you're touching something like your hand, or if you're touching like your face, well, you get a lot of sensory input from those spots on your body already. So the idea is to choose a spot on your body physically that you don't normally receive a lot of physical stimulus to. Does that make sense? So a knuckle is like a really good example of that. So again, the idea is find the height of that emotion, find the height of when you were replaying that memory of when you felt really motivated, and at the height of the emotion, simply press your knuckle. Now, you might say, okay, well, that's not going to work for me. And again, this is not going to happen overnight. The idea here is that you're going to repeat this over time. You're going to create a new habit and a new pattern for your brain, so that, every day for 30 days, you pull up that past memory for just like 5 minutes, right? Replay that memory of when you felt really calm. And then each time you might find that the height of the emotion changes. But the idea is that every time that you find that height of the emotion, you're going to find that physical anchor that you've chosen, like your knuckle, and give yourself that physical stimulus input. What happens eventually with this is that, eventually you're going to get to the point where you don't even have to think about the memory anymore. All you're going to have to do is give yourself the physical stimulus, and your subconscious is going to react. But your subconscious isn't going to react like it normally reacts. Your subconscious is now going to react based on how you have now programmed your mind. Pretty crazy stuff, okay? And again, this does not happen overnight. So don't beat yourself up if you're like, this isn't working for me, right? It's probably going to take some time for you to be able to kind of replay that over and over again in your mind and really begin to find the height of the emotion. Do it more and more often. And then the idea is that you're going to know this works, because one day you're going to be like, gosh, I really want to feel calm and peaceful right now. And you're going to touch that physical stimulus, and you're going to bring up that same past experience, and therefore bring up the same past positive emotions. And therefore, remember, when we feel an emotion, the hormones follow. So that's going to release those good hormones like dopamine and serotonin, right? Takes time, and it takes a little bit of practice, but I'm telling you, this works for me every time. Anytime I get up in front of a room and I need to like do a public speaking gig, or if I'm training I still train with my old company as well. I do this before I get up there and start talking. Do the anchor, pull up the memory, and I just go right into it with that feeling. Here's my forewarning for you, though. Beware of what I call FOMOA, fear of missing out on anxiety. Because again, your subconscious has a really strong desire to predict any potential future risks to keep you safe. So again, whether you're trying this or just a second ago, like we were talking about, if you're the type of person like me, where sometimes you meditate and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, why do I keep thinking about negative things all the time when I meditate? Well, again, it's because that subconscious has that really strong desire to turn back on all the way and protect you, because it's been programmed up until now to alert you to stresses, to alert you to potential future anxiety, right? So know that it's natural that FOMOA is going to come up. Yeah, fear from the inside out. The FOMOA is going to happen. It's a natural thing. But you just have to be able to then say, okay, great. I know that's just my subconscious reacting. I'm going to go ahead and let that thought pass through and find the next thought with intention. So that is our first strategy, is being able to anchor so that you can create your desired emotion in the moment. Anytime that you are feeling really, really stressed out and need a break from that, we talked about nervous system regulation habits, but in terms of reprogramming your mindset, this whole idea of anchoring can be a really, really effective strategy. Feel free, y'all, put any questions that you have in the chat as we're going along here. The next one, this is one of my favorites, and it's this whole idea of instead of like anchoring, which is being able to kind of hack your internal state of being or your internal emotions, another way to go about this process of top-down thinking is to, again, leverage the power of your imagination. And your mind, you can think about your mind as a record of the past and a map to the future at the same exact time. But whichever program runs in your life is dependent on how much we still live in the past versus how much we simulate our future. It's this, again, this kind of two-way feedback cycle that's always going on. And it's a choice. It's a choice at any given moment which way we allow the cycle to go. But if we don't carefully observe our thoughts, and if we don't carefully observe what our subconscious is doing, then the subconscious is going to choose our thoughts for us, likely based on a lot of those limiting and destructive beliefs. I talk about this a lot. I'm working on writing my first book, which is going to be called The Intention Deficit. And it's this whole idea that, to no fault of our own, a lot of us don't have goals anymore because we're stuck in that reaction mode, reacting to our past and reacting to our thoughts. So the idea here with this next strategy called future self-simulation is to program your future. Instead of living based on the record of the past, to live in the moment based on a map to your future, creating your future through simulation. So just like pilots is a great example of this. They spend hours and hours before they get on a real plane, spending time in flight simulators, simulating all of these different potential scenarios that could possibly even happen, so that their brain is then primed before the real thing even happens. The same thing works for you in your mind and being able to create your future reality. So the first step to future self-simulation is our second strategy. And this goes back to this whole idea of framing it in the affirmative or the positive, is what would your future, more motivated, more calm, more peaceful, what would your future self say, do, how would they behave? Imagine what your future self, how they would be acting and behaving. That's the first step, is to simply ask yourself, if I were to have my desired outcome, how would my future self behave? Okay, and again, if you're not sure about this, if that's really hard for you to imagine, then you can also ask yourself, think about it like a mentor. How would my mentor that already does this really good, how would somebody else that I know that already is really good about living in a state of calm and peace, or living in a state of confidence and motivation, how would they behave? What would they be saying? Second step then is to literally create a simulation in your mind of this future scenario, this future experience. This is like this whole idea in manifestation, kind of, where you visualize it as if it's kind of already happening for you, as if it's already yours. By visualizing your future in this present moment and really being able to soak in the good and feel what it would feel like to be that future version of yourself right now, you are then again doing the work of programming your subconscious through your conscious thought. You're doing the work of that top-down thinking versus that bottom-up attention that a lot of us go or live in on a daily basis. And again, similar to what we talked about with the previous strategy as well, is that we want to involve as many senses as possible here. So as you are imagining you're more confident, you're more motivated, you're more peaceful future self, think about what would they be seeing around them? What would they be hearing, smelling, tasting? Again, involving as many senses as possible. And then again, fourth and last here is, because remember that the control comes from the conscious, is that it's important to repeat this and really keep up focused on this conscious intention of literally programming your future. Now, I talk a little bit about this in the next workshop that's coming up in July. I'll tell you all about it here at the end in more detail. But again, this whole idea of like the brain science and of mindset and manifestation is that we can think positive thoughts, but if we're not doing that thing as a habit, then we're not actually doing anything for our brain. Because we can think positive thoughts for 5 minutes, but then after those 5 minutes, we go right back into reacting mode, where our subconscious then begins to program our conscious thoughts. So the idea here is to keep up with this as a habit, to be able to do this, maybe once a day, maybe it's once a week just to get started with, is really spending time. I like to do this at night, every night. And it's not about my future self 10 years from now. It's about my future self tomorrow. I do it every night and I just imagine, what do I want my future self's day to look like tomorrow? What would my future, more successful, motivated self's day sound like, look like, feel like, smell like, involving as many of those senses as possible? All right, so we talked a little bit about this whole idea of programming your present state. We talked a little bit about programming your future self. But here's the thing, y'all, is that even with all of that, for a lot of us, including myself, our past is still full of negative experiences that are now sabotaging our growth and getting in the way of our true intentions. Just like we talked about, just a few moments ago, right? We can try to think positive things and we can try to feel positive emotions, but a lot of the times our past gets in the way of that, because the subconscious beliefs and those programs that have been running for the past 20 some years, they get in the way. They form the brick wall that blocks us from being able to think in a certain way or to feel in a certain way. So one last way to think about, and this is the most powerful one that we're really going to focus on at the end here, is to change your brain's way of how it perceives its past. Okay, so we talked about this last week. Remember that to change your mind, you need to change your brain. And to change your brain, you need to change your mind. Your mind and your brain are highly, highly influenced by each other, right? So I want to just preface this by saying what I'm about to talk to you about is not about disregarding past trauma. This is not about gaslighting past trauma. By all means, we need to be able to do the things to process our past negative experiences, whether it be from stress and burnout at work or otherwise in life, right? But what we want to get away from is spending every moment of our days focused on the past, focused on what could have been, right? And so what this next strategy, and the last one we're going to really highly focus on for the time today, is this whole idea of reframing your past experiences. So remember, for those of you that were here with me in week one of the things that we talked about was this idea of a stress journal. And has anybody been able to begin to identify any patterns in their stress journal? Maybe a certain belief that you're beginning to identify with, that all of those thoughts are stemming from. If you can think of one, go ahead and put it in the chat. If not, no worries, because that sometimes takes some time, right? But the first step of all this has to be identifying the belief that's keeping you stuck. I know for me, when I was going through kind of this whole journey of burnout recovery and really going down this rabbit hole, is the big belief for me was that my level of productivity was equal to my worth. And Jessica, exactly. This whole idea too of like, I don't deserve to feel happy or feeling not enough. The not enoughness is oftentimes going to be the root issue. And for me, when I think about like that, my level of worth came from my level of productivity, it all boiled down to the same thing, the feeling of not enoughness. So begin to identify, what is that not enoughness for you? Do you feel like you're not valuable enough? Do you feel like you're not worthy enough? Do you feel like you're not deserving enough? Whatever that belief is, begin to just kind of consciously bring that awareness to the front of your mind. Cool. Now, here's the thing, y'all, is that beliefs are formed for one reason and one reason only. And that reason is to keep us safe. So in the case of the belief that I hold that my value comes from my level of productivity, that belief kept me safe. From what? Well, as a millennial, I graduated in 2007, right before the Great Recession. And so getting into the workforce, one of the first things I experienced was a recession. And so in order for me to be able to prove my enoughness during that time and through the early years of my career, I told myself, and I created a story in my mind that said, in order for me to be able to prove my value, I need to do more. I need to overcommit. I need to overachieve. I need to people please, right? So all of our beliefs are formed to keep us safe. And then we create these mechanisms for avoiding future situations where the belief could be tested. So if I believe that I'm not worthy enough without burning and stressing myself out, my mind is going to talk me into holding on to that belief as true as a way to avoid testing out the belief to see if it's really true anymore. So the defense mechanism becomes stress. The defense mechanism for so many of us becomes stress. We use stressing ourselves out as a way to avoid any potential threat to our level of worth or value. Zeta, things won't change because whatever I do is not enough to deserve happiness and worth. And it's no wonder that so many of us probably have that same belief as well too, right? Because we have spent all of our lives up into, some of us like me, our late 30s and even early 40s, trying to go and hustle on this hamster wheel of hustle culture and still not being able to achieve the quote unquote American dream. So it's no wonder why we have these beliefs. But again, these beliefs, in one way or another, when we get down to the root of them, are there to keep us safe. So the second thing then is, after being able to realize what the belief is to be able to then recall what might have been some of those past experiences that have strengthened that belief for you, whether those be related to stress at work. Again, I'll use my example here for you as well, is that, again, the Great Recession of 2008 really solidified that belief for me that I need to do more. And then, when I moved from the Midwest out here to California, this was, 12 years ago or whatever, things were a lot more expensive out here. And so I had to take up multiple jobs, and I had to continue to stress myself out just to be able to afford to live, right? And so all of these experiences from our past lives then up until this very last moment are continuing to solidify a lot of these beliefs that were formed 20, 30 some years ago. So begin to identify what might be some of those past experiences. And again, this might not be the easy work, right? Because a lot of the times, a lot of us have been through past trauma. So by all means, you all, please, 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 if it helps you, and if you are in therapy currently, or if you have considered therapy, highly, highly recommend it. If nothing else, to simply be able to allow yourself to go through a process of giving yourself a safe space to be able to then deal with those negative past experiences. So identify the belief and identify what might be some of the past experiences that have strengthened that belief. And then after you've done that, then again, control is in the conscious and imagination versus reality. So reframing works by slowly changing your perception of the original events. Our memories are simply perceptions at this point in time of the past. Your past no longer exists. The only thing that exists right now is an internal representation and a perception of what was the past. And so if we can begin to change that, we begin to then change the neural networks in our mind associated with that memory. This is, again, not to say that we're disregarding our past trauma at all. This is to say, what are some small things that we can do to reframe? So perhaps it's simply being able to say, how has those past experiences made me a stronger person today? Or perhaps it's saying, maybe I'm going to reimagine that event and change one aspect of it. I'm going to step in as the hero to my younger self and stand up to that bigger person that hurt me before. Okay, so the idea here is to be able to slowly change your perception, but you have to do this in a way that your subconscious mind is able to accept that as true. So you can't just change the entire memory all at once. It's about changing tiny, tiny parts of it and reframing tiny parts over time so that your brain has the permission to then restructure the way that it creates that internal representation of the memory. And then this is the tough part, I will say, is giving gratitude for how the belief has kept you safe. Because we absolutely cannot let go of a belief when we're holding on to it with resentment and anger. It is critically important to let go of those negative subconscious sabotaging beliefs with compassion and with love. That belief has done its job to keep you safe from potential future dangers associated with the reason it got created in the first place. Ask yourself, what has this belief kept me safe from? Kept me safe from maybe the multiple recessions, losing my job, keeps me on the path to what society taught me is required for success, right? Give it the gratitude that it deserves. And then as you begin to do that, and as you begin to repeat this every so often to reframe various parts of the experience, over time, again, it's going to take time. Mindset work does not happen overnight, but over time, the program that's associated with that belief then begins to change because all of the associated memories with that belief are also changing because of what you are doing in terms of, again, using the conscious to reprogram the subconscious. So here's what we're going to do, y'all, is don't worry if you don't have it right next to you. But what I want you to do is, even if you just have a piece of paper nearby you, is get out that piece of paper, if you have that belief in mind right now, and simply write down on a piece of paper whatever that belief is, whatever that limiting, sabotaging belief that you are ready to let go of. And then whether or not you do this right now or maybe later tonight or another day is to put that paper in an envelope. And you can always go back to it if you need to, okay? And you're going to decide what you're going to do with that. One option could be that you seal it up and that you put it somewhere maybe safe, away, where you're allowing that belief to be sealed up for now. But maybe you're not comfortable with that yet. Maybe you're not quite there yet. And so if that's the case, then maybe you just put it on an open envelope, right? The idea here is to whatever degree you're comfortable with, is to be able to write down that belief and put it somewhere where it then becomes not necessarily quote unquote locked up, but the ability to at least put that belief out of you and onto paper so that you can begin to let it go. Make sure that you let it know how appreciative you are for it, but that you're safe now and that you no longer need that belief to keep you safe, and that it's time to move on in a way that fits with who I want to become instead of who I've been. And then to begin the work of reprogramming those beliefs by modifying your perception of those past experiences. Okay. So we're going to do, before we end things this evening, I'm going to take you through a bit of a guided visualization here as the last thing that we do this evening. So stay tuned for that. So 3 strategies, again, for moving from reacting to creating. We talked about anchoring to create the desired present emotion, future self-simulation to program your desired future, and then reframing to rewire any of those negative sabotaging beliefs from the past. And again, y'all, I'm going to show you in just a moment here. I'll give you a little link that you can access for all of the online courses if you're interested. But the online courses, the reprogramming your mindset one specifically, has guided visualizations for all of this as well. So as we begin to close out here, besties, believe it or not, hopefully now you feel like you have both the what to do and the why it works to keep moving forward. And while our series here in June is coming to an end, there are more events coming up in July to keep the momentum going. So I wanted to make sure that you're all aware of that. Starting, or what is that, 2 weeks from today, our first Millennial Reset group coaching call is happening on July 5th. And it's all based on motivation hacking, how stress and burnout has caused our motivation to be drained. And we're going to talk about brain-based habits to hack your motivation. So that's happening on July 5th. And then coming up in July and then into the beginning of August is the next series in July. And that is the Go Unstuck Yourself 21-Day Challenge, where you're going to learn the brain science of what keeps us stuck living in a reality that is ruled by stress. And you're going to learn the real brain science behind manifestation. There's a lot of people out there that talk about manifestation online, but a lot of it is based on a lot of the kind of the woo-woo. And so this is all going to be about the no BS brain science of mindset and manifestation. Things like your biofield and how your electromagnetic field literally interacts with the universal energy around you at any given moment. It's going to be fun stuff. So get ready here, y'all. This link right here, this tiny URL link, or you can also use the QR code. I'm going to go ahead and put the tiny URL link, in the chat for y'all, and then I'm going to share my screen here. Just a second. Well, I guess that's not going to work here. I'll just do this. So it's just tinyurl.com/mill reset for Millennial Reset. So there's the link, and it's going to take you to this document right here. And so a few things for y'all before we do our final guided visualization together in terms of next steps. For those of you, especially for those of you that have been here for, at least 2 or 3 sessions, I would love to hear your feedback, besties. And so I've got a link here for a post-series survey. And you get a chance also to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So would love to hear your honest feedback. What did you like about the last 4 weeks? What can I do to continue improving? So that's the first link. And then the second part here is ways to keep the momentum going. And so I've got links for you here for those self-directed courses that I just talked about a moment ago. You've got different options here, either the Regulate and Recover, Reprogram Your Mindset, or this is the full access with the bonus course, which gives you everything. So that's an option for you if you're looking to do more kind of self-directed learning. I've also got, I mentioned this, I think in week 1 as part of our giveaways, the Mindset Makeover Annual Planner. This is sold on Amazon, but basically it's an undated annual planner that I designed to be able to help my audience in order to kind of keep up with some of the powerful and impactful changes that we make in our group coaching calls, in the workshop series, things like that. So in addition to having kind of a general annual planner, it's also got motivational, inspirational quotes for each week, mini milestone goals, a habit tracker to keep yourself accountable to some of those habits for regulating your nervous system and reprogramming your mindset, and a mindset check-in reflection for each week. And then each week or each month also includes a nice little month-long check-in with some fascinating brain habits and an adult coloring page because, hey, why not? So you've got that. And then last but not least, for those of you that are ready to be able to take that next step and join the community of the Millennial Reset membership, this is a monthly membership program, so you can get your first 2 weeks for free. And you can also get 33% off as well, whether or not you go with the month one or the annual one. Just make sure you use either reset month if you're doing the monthly, or reset year if you're doing the annual, and you get the 33% off, and you'll still get the 2-week trial. So this is a good way that instead of, the monthly coaching call, if you just want to drop in, it's $10. But if you just want to do the monthly membership, you just pay the, what is that, $9.97 a month with the 30% off. And then you're not only going to get access to the monthly workshop for the coaching calls, but you're going to get full access to all the courses for free. You're going to have access to the group chat for any questions that you might have along the way. We have every month now, I've got our next 3 months lined up with guest speakers that are going to be coming in for the group coaching calls, where we're going to be doing things around like breath work and meditation, chakra work even. So if you are ready to kind of be part of that ongoing community of support, highly encourage you. And this is your official invite, my besties, to join the community support group. Super excited for this. And then down below here on the last page here, you've just got the links to the next upcoming events that I talked about. So the July monthly group coaching call to sign up. And then this link is going to take you to the initial intro workshop for the Go Unstuck Yourself happening in July. But again, if you want to join the membership, then the monthly group coaching call is free. And then you'll also have access then to register for free to the entire July series. Cool? So with that said, we are beginning to close out here, y'all. I talked about the membership. And one last thing here before we go is a little bit of a guided meditation. And this guided meditation is designed for you all to be able to take those limiting beliefs, to take those sabotaging thoughts, and to allow them to be let go. So if you are sticking around, which I highly encourage you to do, this is going to be the last thing that we're going to do here. After this, you're more than welcome to kind of stick around if you have any questions. But before we dive into this last final guided meditation, I just want to say, y'all, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being part of this workshop series. It's been so amazing reading the emails that have been sent to me over the past few weeks, and just people even commenting on TikTok and whatnot. I'm so fucking grateful for my community. And I'm so happy to have all of you as part of that. So just know that I am incredibly grateful for all of you. So here we go, y'all. Last thing before we close out. If you are sticking around, just allow yourself to take a nice deep breath. Allow yourself to relax. And as you take this next deep breath in, just allow your eyes to close. Continue to take those deep breaths. Relax your body. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Allowing yourself to become present in this moment, feeling 10 times more relaxed already. Now, start by bringing to the front of your mind that belief that has maybe been holding you back. Try to remember the past experiences that created this belief in the first place. Recognize the past benefits of this belief. It was created to keep you safe. And at one point in time, it served you. It helped you to avoid potential threats. But now, this belief needs permission to be let go because you don't need it anymore. While it served you in the past, Now it's holding you back. And picture in your mind how your life would be different without this belief. What things would you allow yourself to do? What goals and experiences would you allow yourself to have? Take a moment, be present with this future version of you. Feel what it would feel like to feel motivated, confident, happy, peaceful, abundant, worthy. Now bring back to the forefront of your mind that limiting, sabotaging belief. And imagine that it's a warm blue ball of light that you're holding in your hands, becoming bigger, brighter. Allow yourself to show this belief compassion for the way that it has helped you navigate life. Embrace this warm blue sphere of light. Show it love for keeping you safe. Notice how much lighter it feels already. In just a moment, we're going to take one deep breath together and hold it at the top. Here we go. Deep breath in and hold. And when I get to 1, we're going to allow this belief that's been holding us back to let go. 3, 2, 1. Feel what it feels like to let go of whatever's no longer serving you. Allow this belief to just float off into the distance with the utmost compassion for it. And to take that next step and to think that next thought with intention as your guide. Continue breathing on your own. Take whatever time you need to be present in this moment. And whenever you're ready, come back to this space and allow your intentions to guide you through the rest of your day and beyond, my friends.